Good hello, thanks for watching another palm reading, another Sunday case study. This week I'm looking at the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He has been sworn in for his third term as the Indian Prime Minister, and I want to see what his hands can show us. She's very interested, aren't you? For that. She gets right in the nose. So, I mean, straight away we can see he has analytical hands. There's no doubt about that. The thumb is relatively low set, and it's fairly long actually on the right hand. Interestingly, on the left hand, it doesn't look like the thumb is quite as long, although this could be the angle. I'm pretty sure we've got a slightly longer right thumb, which is interesting. We certainly got, I would think that this has sort of increased his, um, the way he carries out his actions. And notice the curvature of the thumb in general. He's someone who's motivated by a cause to get behind. He's quite sort of emotionally motivated, emotionally charged decisions. And that low set thumb as well, combined with that curvature of the tip of the thumb, you'd always seen this in the hands of, um, philanthropist charity workers. And also notice the curvature, this sort of slight wasting here of the back of the second phalanx of the thumb, and you see it on both hands, not so much on the right hand, but this is certainly a sign of a diplomacy skill. The finger leanings tell a story in themselves. Notice how Mercury on the left hand leans in slightly as well. This is also a sign of diplomacy, a sign of persuasive verbal skills. But the way the fingers all lean in like this towards one another, they're sort of relying on each other. This is always a sign of someone who is thinking about the future, someone who's quite sort of future conscious. There are natural concerns for the future. Now that was the left hand. That's this person's sort of thoughts and feelings about the future. On the right hand, we see things are a bit more aligned. Things aren't quite as there's not as much worry here. So the right hand is showing that practically, materialistically, things aren't as such an issue in terms of the future. Also, interestingly, we've got more alignment with the Mercury finger as well. And so I'm wondering here if his ability to communicate, to express himself, has been developed through his career role. And one thing I find very interesting about the lines on his hands here. First of all, okay, you were saying? Did you want to repeat that? No? I'm not gonna lie, right? It's difficult making a YouTube video in a house full of four fur babies. The fate line rising from the lifeline is generally always a sign of someone who has been encouraged by the family to follow in the family footsteps, to work in the family business, perhaps. And so I'm wondering here, and I don't actually know anything really about this man other than what I've already said. Don't actually even know his age. I'll have to look that up because that is relevant. But I don't know if this person's parents were involved in some way in politics. I find here, it sort of looks as though the headline has broken in some way. There's a disturbance there. I find that very interesting, and I'm wondering if this was potentially. I'm just looking at the left hand here to get a bit more clarity. Was this a physical head injury of some sort? Because we're looking at the right hand. Is this some sort of trauma to the head in some way? The headline talks wonderfully, allowing for extra perspective and an ability to see things from more than one angle, which is key in politics. That makes perfect sense. The arc of the headline is overall, is quite straight. It dips, it just about breaks into the barrier of the realms of the abstracts and forks. So we have someone who has a good imagination, who's not completely um, blunted, blinkered by cold logic. We've got someone here who is both very logical and has a good, um, ability to sort of say, well, what if? Get the sense as well, because we have the lifeline and the headline, which look pretty detached here overall. And when we look at the right hand, there is a connection here, but it breaks away pretty early on in life, probably about the age of 15 or so. And that shows this person's independence, their need for freedom of movement and freedom of, uh, they have a need to be themselves and do things in their own way. It shows a bit of a radical thinker. I mean, we're not, so detached that we are kind of brash and impatient. There's certainly um, a strong need for freedom here. Notice how the headline breaks away as it rises quite sharply away from the lifeline, and I think this person reached quite high achievement of an academic sort of level quite early on in life. I think they aspired quite quickly, and that's why they're sort of reaching away. Um, Notice how when the headline breaks away from the lifeline, it reaches towards Mercury, the place of learning and language skills, writing. So I've taken the time to find a much better image here, and we can see a lot more clarity, and I can get a much greater understanding as to what's going on here. And we can see here that, obviously, as I say, we have the fate line rising from the lifeline. And this may well be the original sort of um, idea or purpose for this person, in some way influenced by the family. And then we have this secondary idea about what should be. And this is carried out in action. And really interestingly here, we do have family influences here. We have support from the family. And notice how the headline, it rises upwards towards the sun mount, towards the Apollo mount. Now, this is quite a rare sign, and it's a hugely positive sign because it's showing massive success, greatness in areas of academia. And such a marking in the hand of a creative would certainly point towards um, brilliance, greatness, success, fame achieved through some sort of literary or artistic work in the hand of someone who's a businessman or a scientist, or in this case, certainly industry, commerce and business is relevant towards, and it shows someone who is achieving some sort of prominence here and achieving full stop, really. It's a marking of exceptional success in his area, in his field of expertise in industry. And the other thing to notice at the same time here, we've got this sort of break here in the headline, and I mentioned a possible head injury. And, a break in the headline like this, or even a bit of an overlap underneath Saturn, it's the sign of someone who's quite accident prone. It's a sign of someone who's taken a risk and a potential accident. And, being that we have some sort of disconnect between the head and the lifeline, not completely, not throughout the entirety of, the line's creation, but there is a sense here of taking risks and possibility of an accident linked to, it's quite sort of fated, quite literally, because it's connected to the secondary fate line. And we can see that it occurs or may have occurred at the age of around about 36 or 37 for this person. And it seems to have affected their career. However, when we look at the overall success of this person, and you can see the career after this, we can see that, things haven't been thwarted. The future for this person doesn't look obstructed. There isn't complete clarity here. But it would be foolish to sort of, interpret this here as negative overall. I think that the career of this person is very difficult, and that's why we're not seeing perhaps the strength and there isn't quite so much of enjoyment. And also the thumb, notice the kind of thickness of the second phalanx. We've got here someone who has a lot of thoughts and ideas that they're almost sort of brimming with just how much they have to cope with. The stress and the strain, the demand of this person's workload is tremendous. And we've also got here, look at the way Jupiter's really bending in here. This person is highly aware of just how much pressure the the world around them is putting on them. Their need to be a sober and upright, upstanding citizen in the eyes of everyone watching. The strain of this is quite great. And again, this is someone who is thinking about the future, both Apollo and Saturn lean in. Overall, this is an Apollonian, someone who's really relying on their talents to pull through all their fingers pretty much. I mean, Mercury is kind of straight as well. And again, communication is obviously key with this person. I'm starting to get a picture here as an idea of this person's, real sort of capabilities. And whilst this person certainly has actually some artistic talent here, some really strong creative abilities, they are an advert really, because this is a square palm with some long, splayed out features. The um, prominent lines are certainly the three major palmar lines. It's all relatively spaced out. This is someone who loves debate, ideas, concepts, who's constantly moving in their minds. Notice how the realm of the mental faculties are quite sort of splayed out in themselves. They're quite wide. The, the capacity for thought and feeling actually is quite strong. This is someone who is a good judge of character, and they have and also a pretty good instincts about them as well. I did mention business earlier. The Mercury line is, you know, certainly someone who this Mercury line is pretty bowed out, and it's reaching into upper Mars before it lands on the Mercury mountain itself. And it's someone who is very able to use their personality to benefit others, to use their charisma, use their voice to help with the future of others, which is actually a really useful trait for a politician. And I get the sense that this person is truly trying to see things from all angles to get the best for everyone. And whilst this person, their heart line is pretty straight, it's deep feeling. So whilst they probably present themselves as someone who's quite calculated and cold on many levels, I think their underlying feelings here are quite strong. Notice how the heartline itself is pretty low lying. This is someone who is considering, again, Apollo and Saturn really bow in towards each other. This is always the sign of someone who is considerate of others, who's considering full stop. They are thinking about the future. They're thinking about the bigger picture. They're thinking about everybody involved, everyone concerned. And again, the low lying thumb as well is always a sign of a humanitarian. Whilst we don't really see the stretched out heart line, reaching right out onto Jupiter, I'm not going to rely too much on the clarity of this image. We do see other signs in the hand here which are showing someone who is of a very considerate nature, not necessarily caring and loving as such, but someone who is certainly thinking of everyone involved. Actually, just to back that up a little bit, someone who has a heart line and a headline which are very close together, very sort of narrowed in, that shows a very sort of self-centered person, someone who's quite narrow-minded as well, someone who's thinking about themselves and doesn't have an ability to see and feel the greater, wider picture and everyone involved in their decisions. And so, this is another sign of someone who's actually quite considerate. And interestingly, if you look down here, you can see the makings of an escape line of some sort, and you always see that with analytical lines. And their hands are quite analytical anyway. And, the analytical person needs that freedom of exploration, which is why the fingers are generally always quite splayed out. There's that need for exploration and experimentation, for searching. There's that curiosity and that wonder that actually needs to be satiated at some point in a person's life, some point in the life of an analytical, and they need to travel. And if they don't do it when they're young, they will end up doing it when they're older. And we don't see such a desire here. It's not fantastic. It's not fully joined. So I'm wondering if this person's need for travel has already been satiated, likely through their job role, likely through their work. So this person's role in life really suits their character. Thing I do find quite interesting is the way that this uh, prominence of success in industry through these sort of academic pursuits here, the way the headline reaches up and forms this sun line, it merges with this secondary sun line from the heart line here, forming a kind of triangle above the heart line on the Apollo mount here, just underneath. Quite interesting. It's not altogether a triangle on the Apollo mount because it's not completely isolated. It's formed out of a convergence of these lines. So it doesn't really have that meaning. But it is in some way profound enough to remark on. It shows um, the combination of the creative and artistic skills here combined with this um, industrious kind of success in business, in industry. So I wonder exactly what this means. I think here that this person, and I have already mentioned they have some creative and artistic skills, are utilizing these creative, um, this ability to say what if within the abstract in their uh, political role in some way. Their decision making is somehow, they're thinking really quite unconventionally and they're trying out different things perhaps. And I think at some point, I just pause for a moment there because I wanted to sort of reevaluate a little bit here. And you can see here this line, it comes from the attachment line, a very strong, it's obviously, really loves his wife. Um, an attachment, there's a connection here, an influence, branches over and touches where these lines meet to form this kind of triangle formation. And it's around about the age of, I would say about his age now. I've just looked up his age, 73. And I would say it's about the age of 73. So it's showing that there's support here from family, which is what a success line from the heart line um, is an indication of that anyway, that his success is supported by a love interest, but it's directly influenced. So this creative uh, freedom here, as it reaches over towards Mercury, I feel as though there's support here from a partner to perhaps start working in a way that's enabling their creative processes, and they are perhaps getting involved in writing. There's some literary success here, and this is what I explained earlier on that within someone who is artistic or creative, that's what this represents. So it could well be a merging of this um, in industry, prominence in industry, and literary success as well. And I've just noticed down here, and this is really interesting. Notice at the bottom of the fate line here, not only is this a fate line that shows someone who has reincarnated with a purpose, who's come back with unfinished business from a previous life, it always provides someone with extra sort of ambition and a desire to achieve and get ahead. Notice how we've got a bit of an island here that kind of looks to interrupt, disrupt, and as it does after this point, the person's sort of path in life isn't as strong. It's faint. It's not as productive and happy. And so this is a really um, unfortunate, event in this person's life that was completely uncontrollable. It comes from Pluto. It comes from low down. This a very distant place of an unchangeable event, an event that occurred which this person has no control over, which was always going to happen. It's fated. Quite literally, it's marking the fate line here with um, a very unfortunate event here. I don't know what this was, but it was very early on in life. It was when they were very young. It is joined on with this escape line. It's attached to a feeling of escape, of travel, and it likely had something to do with move when young, and maybe it's linked to this here. Maybe when this person was very young, they had some sort of head injury of some sort. Although, unfortunately, I don't really have the clarity here to kind of get to the bottom of it. I'm just sort of surmising a bit of conjecture. What I find interesting about this person's hand is that he really has the hand of great orator, a speaker, someone who has creative abilities as well, refined taste, someone who's able to explain and break down information with strong and gifted powers of verbal, someone who's quite eloquent. There we go. It took me enough time to figure out what I was trying to say. And, most of the time I see the hands of politicians as actually salesmen. When I see Donald Trump's hand, for example, he's got the hand of a salesman. Whereas this person, he really has excellent skills in diplomacy and communication, as well as an ability to see things from many angles and try out new things. He has a need to explore and understand, to debate, and he thinks very deeply about things as well. He's analytical, but not so much, not too creative, not delving so much into his abstract that he's unrealistic or um, you know thinking in terms that aren't just practical. There's a great balance here within this person to be level-headed at the same time as seeing the bigger picture. There is also quite a great deal of frustration at the moment. As I said, this person has a lot of ideas and is struggling to action them. There's, I feel, some issues with the family, perhaps with this person's son, and I think this person will likely not die in their native homeland. I think they will, move quite far away and settle abroad and live out their later years in a far distant country. Let me know what your thoughts are on this reading. Perhaps you've picked up on something that I haven't. That often happens. Two palms are often better than one. And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next week. Please subscribe, and I enjoy looking forward to reading your comments. Thank you.